Welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast, the podcast for those that are curious about what's possible inside their four walls. Before we get into this episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors that make this all possible. Do you feel like automation is unapproachable? Well, Big Joe Autonomous Solutions is changing that with the AP44. The AP44 is a fully autonomous pallet truck built for real work. Floor-to-floor pallet transportation, no infrastructure changes, no complicated IT project. Setup happens right at the onboard touchscreen. If you can use a smartphone, you can use the AP44. Just select a mission and the AP44 gets moving. Easy switch between fully autonomous, semi-autonomous, and manual mode on this pallet jack keeps it versatile. Learn more at BigJoeForklifts.com. That's BigJoeForklifts.com. Are you shipping orders? Of course you are. Are you getting cash back on your parcel spend? With Dash.fi, you can maximize cash back with their special focus on shipping spend. Leverage their corporate card platform to get cash back on your shipping spend and utilize their AI-powered audit tools to make sure your finances are tight. Don't leave money on the table. Check out Dash.fi at Dash.fi. Did you check your clipboard today? Throw that thing in the trash. It's time for a new way to run your dock and yard operations with Conduit. Streamline your dock scheduling, driver check-ins, yard management, and photo proof into one digital platform with Conduit's easy-to-use system. If you're still using clipboards, spreadsheets, whiteboards, or nothing at all, it's time to cut the chaos and get on Conduit. Go live in days, not months, at www.helloconduit.com/new warehouse. That's www.helloconduit.com/new warehouse. Temp agency let you down again? It's time for a different approach. Spotwork is the industrial labor marketplace built for modern warehouse operations. When you need available workers fast, Spotwork lets you post a job and get to hundreds of spotters in minutes. Spotwork's job fulfillment rates are above 95% across 35 markets in the U.S. No agency markups, no long-term commitments, and real human support around the clock. Head to spotwork.co to get the labor you need now, and make sure to mention the New Warehouse for a special promo. Thank you to our sponsors, and now let's get to the podcast.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, we are going to talk to Nick Malewicki, who is the General Manager of Autonomous Solutions at Big Joe. And we've had Big Joe on the show multiple times before. We've talked a lot about their lift truck offerings, a lot about their shift to lithium ion and things of that nature. But today we're going to talk about their autonomous solutions. And they just unveiled 4 new autonomous solutions within their autonomous line at Automate recently. So we're going to dive into those with Nick, and we're going to hear a little bit about how they are creating approachable automation for warehouse operators, and how and what use cases they are tackling with these solutions themselves. So Nick, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, Kevin. Appreciate the time. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely looking forward to this as well. I know you all have been working on the autonomous solutions for a little bit, had something in the market previously, and now unveiling kind of these 3 editions or 4 editions, maybe. I guess we'll get some clarification there from you, but definitely excited to hear about these and some of the reception as you recently unveiled these as well. So for people that maybe are not familiar, why don't we kick things off here? Tell us a little bit about Big Joe, and tell us, I guess, too, specifically about the autonomous solutions division of Big Joe.
Big Joe has actually been building material handling equipment for over 70 years. And in fact, this year we're celebrating our 75th year.
Yes.
And through that whole time, it's been compact, practical equipment that regular operators can use without, a lot of complexity. So walkie stackers, pallet trucks, task support vehicles, and even going into your class 1 sit down counterbalance forklifts. But then the autonomous solutions division exists really around the same philosophy into autonomy. So we partner with Thorough.ai, based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, whose embodied AI platform powers our autonomy layer. And we really build it into the equipment designed for the facilities that people actually run. So a little bit of my background is not your typical journey into automation.
Okay.
I spent almost 20 years on the other side of the table as a buyer in operating autonomous solutions and managing large leased fleets of material handling equipment. So I've sat through the vendor pitches. I've lived through deployments that went sideways or never generated an ROI. And really my approach to running the division of Big Joe is really from that buyer's perspective and an operator's perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting position to be in, right? Which I think is a great position, right? Because you get to see and you understood kind of, some of the things you went through as a customer in the past, right? As a potential customer. And now how do you take that in for Big Joe's customer? How do you come up with solutions that make sense for that customer and that are, easy to manage and deal with and things of that nature? So you also mentioned that, Big Joe has been in business for 75 years now. And actually I got the press release this morning about that, actually. So happy birthday to Big Joe and everybody over there, of course. But obviously, 75 years ago, Big Joe did not start in autonomous offerings, right? So tell us a little bit about the kind of journey into the autonomous side of things and how did that start, and what was really maybe kind of the catalyst for Big Joe to say, hey, we need to start looking at some autonomous solutions for our customers or maybe a customer segment that we haven't serviced in the past?
About 4 years ago, we started our autonomous journey, and it started with our BPM 44, which was our semi-autonomous pallet truck. And really, we chose the pallet truck because we are a global leader in Class 3 equipment. So very naturally for us, let's start with something that we are a leader in. So we took that approach of looking at semi-autonomous and really looking at how do we keep to our core of operators involved with the equipment, and really how do we get ourselves into customer operations so that we can learn what customers actually need versus kind of whiteboarding it and maybe guessing a little bit more of what we think they need. So that was really our start about 4 years ago with the BPM 44. And a lot of the lessons that we've learned along the way actually came through feature requests. So one of the first ones was a call box solution that, customers wanted the robot to show up to them. And they were okay with that semi-autonomous, which is an operator engaging the pallet and then the unit autonomously traveling and unloading or dropping off that pallet. But they also didn't want to walk to a queue area or have somebody send it to them. They wanted that to show up autonomously. So we were able to solve that. And then having the robot behave differently in different areas of their facility. So, zone features, things like invisible walls. So, if anybody has, say, like a robot vacuum at home, a lot of
Mm.
times you could put up those invisible walls or a do not enter zone. But we can do that on our equipment as well, so that think around pedestrian walkways. It may be in the area where the robot operates, but you never want it to cross into that pedestrian walkways. So as we continue to deploy out to our customers and stay engaged with those customers through the process and even after deployment, continuously taking in feedback allowed us to continue to refine, provide more features, provide refinements, and ultimately that got us to where we unveiled at Automate, which is our new AP44, which is the fully autonomous pallet truck. So it's the same, built on the same philosophy as the BPM 44, but now bringing in an extra feature of being fully autonomous, meaning that you no longer have an operator engaging that pallet, but
Okay.
instead the robot is going to do that autonomous pickup, transport, and drop off. And I think through our initial offering of starting semi-autonomous has really allowed us to then build upon that and offer customers really three vehicles in one. It still operates as a manual end rider. It can operate semi-autonomous, but then we also have now this where it can also operate a fully autonomous. And and really our customer has an interest for that full autonomy, but a lot of times they're not ready. And that is either they have no automation in their facility. Maybe they're just starting their journey with automation and they didn't know where to start with. But having a piece of equipment that can start semi-autonomous, allow their operators to get used to this piece of equipment, allow the leadership to learn more about how does automation actually fit within their workflows, become comfortable with it semi-autonomous, and now you have that fully autonomous feature ready to go when the operation is ready versus adopting your operation to fully autonomous, and you may not actually be ready for that yet.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting to hear the evolution there, and that was one thing I was curious about for sure, because I know when you guys did the grand opening in Wisconsin, there I was there and got to see the BPM 44 in person, and got to set up a mission for it and everything, getting hands on with it was very, very cool. So I was curious, like, is the new pallet jack, the AP44, is that different than that? And it sounds like it's taken the next step to where there's a fully autonomous mode, I guess, for it, right, to be able to do that. So tell us, you talked a little bit about the pallet jack evolution there, but you unveiled four different solutions, right? So tell us all four, just so we know, like, kind of the context and the different use cases that you're approaching here.
So with unveiling all four pieces of equipment at Automate, we really want to be able to solve customers' pain points when it comes to autonomous material movement workflows. And each of these has a different purpose. The pallet truck being able to do that horizontal ground-to-ground transport, the tugger for long distance hauls, our stacker is truly a robot. It is an AGV that can pick up ground level, place onto a tugger cart. It can pick up from a P&D station, a pickup and drop off station. Think in-feed conveyors for high-speed stretch wrappers, out-feed. And the same thing with that counterbalance forklift. Same use cases as that stacker, but has more of a traditional look. And really the goal with our equipment is 3 out of those 4 actually have a manual override, meaning that you can use it as a standard piece of equipment. So that pallet truck you can still use as a manual end rider. The tugger, it's a center right tugger. You can still use that as a manual center right tugger. The ACV40, our 3-wheel counterbalance forklift, can still be used as a standard forklift. And really the stacker is that one true robot. So allowing customers to have the flexibility and the comfort level of introducing automation if that automation has any disruption or your workflow and just your throughput demands something that the automation can't handle, you have a piece of equipment that you can easily adapt and utilize still, and you don't have just a paperweight. You don't have where you have an autonomous vehicle stuck and you have to now to try to recover, or you have downtime because of that autonomy.
Yeah, and I think that makes so much sense too, because it is, as you mentioned kind of earlier, right, for people that are just getting into like autonomous solutions and things like that, I think, that ability to switch back and forth, I imagine, creates a better comfort level over time, right? To know that like, okay, well, maybe if I'm not fully comfortable with just letting it go, doing its thing fully autonomously, like I still have the option to jump on and do something if I need to in the manual mode, which I think makes sense. And that kind of leads me to my next question too, because Big Joe is certainly known for having like very kind of practical and user-friendly equipment, whether it's kind of the 120 volt charging options, even, talking to Marty at Modex earlier this year about, making sure to, even though it's lithium, designing it to feel like it's a classic kind of propane or otherwise powered forklift for the user and that user experience. So how did you kind of take that, and I'm sure you probably drew from some of your prior user kind of side of your career, but how did you kind of take that ethos and carry that into the autonomous solutions themselves as you develop these new offerings?
We carry this forward in three different ways. So first is infrastructure. And really it's the absence of having to go in and add reflectors. There's no magnetic tapes. There's no QR code stuck on your floor. This is truly an infrastructure light or free type automation, meaning that it's designed to deploy into brownfield buildings, older facilities where the floors aren't perfect. There's Wi-Fi dead zones. That's real world environments. And a lot of automation can't handle that. And we purposely built for those brownfield applications, those older facilities, older warehouses, environments that may not be easily conducive to automation. We're able to overcome that with our offerings. Secondly, on that is I think our deployment model. So we're not selling consulting with a robot attached to it. We want to be able to come in and be able to have that robot up and running in a matter of hours. And I think keeping that short window of seeing that where that ROI is being developed within days versus months or years, or maybe never. I think that's really what sets us apart, is just the ease of the deployment. And then I kind of touched on it already, but really it's the human element of it. So 3 out of these 4, the AP44, the ATC100, and the ACV40 are all dual mode. They can be operated manually at any time. And it's very deliberate. So when you buy a pure robot, you're all in on the automation working every hour, every shift. And with having that dual motor or a hybrid type piece of equipment, you always have a usable truck. So think peaks, unusual moves. Maybe there was something that from a quality standpoint just isn't right, and it's not a safe unit to be handled by automation and traverse 1,000 feet across your facility. Whatever your day throws at you, whatever type of throughput goals, you don't have to hinge it 100% on the autonomy. Now, I will caveat that to say it was very deliberate when we created the ASC40, so our counterbalance stacker.
Okay.
Because there are those customers that don't want their operators involved with automation. They truly want a robot to be handling the product, to be moving through their facility, and they don't want those operators involved. So we do have a piece of equipment for those customers that want that option.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, it's really interesting to hear kind of the approach there, and also I think very interesting the last point there, where how do you balance between and I guess balance is the right word, counterbalance, right? Balance between like the customers that want to have kind of that hybrid approach almost, where like, okay, I can use this equipment normally as a manual with a human, or I could turn it on to autonomous mode, as you mentioned, or those customers that are like, no, we just want it fully autonomous. That's what we want. We want humans hands off, basically. So it's interesting to hear how you've kind of created that balance within there. And I think, that kind of goes to maybe, what I've seen around the launch, as you guys have been doing this over the last month, right? You've kind of been using this term, approachable automation. So tell us a little bit about, like, what does that actually mean to you? What does that mean to Big Joe? And how does that translate to the end user at the end of the day? Like, what do you consider approachable automation?
When we talk about this, and it's truly something that we want operators to feel comfortable utilizing, working around, leadership to have confidence in, but it's not where you need to hire someone specific to own or operate this equipment. So it's not automation engineers, it's not systems integrators, it's not six-figure integration projects before the first pallet moves. Deployment, we measure it in days, not years. It works in your existing workflow instead of forcing you to redesign your facility around it. So typically when we think about automation, in just the autonomous industry, it starts with a discovery phase. And throughout that process, it typically ends with a change order at the end. And I was on that receiving end where what I was being told up front wasn't what I got delivered at the end. So approachable really means removing that complexity and delivering a machine that gets to work from day one. And really approachable is going to look different depending on the customer as well. So for most operation, it's that dual mode equipment. People can use it just like any other truck. They have a comfort level of knowing that they don't have to 100% rely on fully autonomous equipment. But then, as I mentioned previously, there are going to be those operations where let it loose, walk away from it, let it do its job. That's going to be effective for those customers. But either way, the burden of the automation is on us, and it's not on that end customer's org chart where they're having to hire additional labor just to manage automation.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, and it's very interesting, obviously to hear from your perspective, as you mentioned, because you were on the other side of that, as you mentioned there, where it's like, okay, well, yes, this is what we're delivering to you, this is what we're bringing, and then the reality is like it's different, right? It's not exactly what we expected. I think that's unfortunately a common thing that happens in a lot of different areas of our space, and unfortunately, I think that kind of slows progress and innovation a little bit because people get a bad taste in their mouth and they're like, do I want to explore something like this again? So the fact that you're kind of taking that and making it more approachable in that sense, I think really, makes a difference in the product and how the customers are going to interact with that. So, I mean, from that perspective, I mean, do you see these offerings, these, new product line that you're bringing to the market? I mean, do you see this as like a position as a really good kind of entry point for a lot of people into automation? Because I mean, to me, it sounds like that way. Like if somebody's like doesn't have automation already, like it seems like these are potentially good solutions to take that first step. Is that kind of what you think as well?
I do. A lot of the conversations that I have with customers is they don't know where to start, or they have an idea in mind, and a lot of times the idea is trying to automate the most complex part of their operation. And they don't think about the horizontal moves. So think about your dock to stock, your end of line to staging. And the idea behind fully autonomous is very attractive to everybody. But at the end of the day, it's also one of the harder things to implement into an existing operation where there's no offerings right now within automation. So I think really taking a approach of that crawl, walk, run, it fits with our portfolio of autonomous solutions. Is you can start off with that AP44 pallet truck as a repetitive horizontal movements piece of automation and start with that as semi-autonomous, grow into full autonomy. Once the operation becomes more used to having automation, now you can start expanding out. And that's really what our portfolio is positioned to do, is be able to grow with that customer and with that operation and really start on that initial journey with them and allow them to continue to grow with us as we provide more autonomous solutions for their needs. So starting with horizontal transport, then move into that vertical and then general purpose. A facility can start with one task and continue to grow into the rest of them, all within the same platform.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think you're definitely right. Like, or I see that too, where people are like, "Oh, I'm thinking I got to solve this very complex problem if I'm going to use automation or robotics or whatever the case may be." And the reality is, like, the best step usually is a simple kind of, like you said, horizontal move. Is it taking product from the dock to somewhere else, or is it just an A to B move or something of that nature? I think is the right entry level point, because if you try to go too complex, too fast, oftentimes it doesn't quite work out on probably the expectation that you set for yourself ahead of time, right? And so I think it's really interesting how you've kind of developed this and thought about that in this way. I want to kind of go back to where you mentioned about designing to be able to kind of easily come into a brownfield facility, right, without infrastructure change and things of that nature. And I'm curious your thoughts on this, and maybe you can give us some insight on like how the AP44, for example, would handle a situation like this. But I've heard in the last couple months in some conversations with operators where they're working with automation of different form factors and things of that nature. But they're running into challenges sometimes because their warehouse isn't necessarily clean or pristinely organized. So there's things like pallet wrap hanging, maybe some trash on the floor or things like that. I mean, how does that impact like the navigation when it's in full autonomous mode? I mean, is that throwing exceptions into the mix? Is that creating challenges? Or have you thought about how the AP44, for example, would navigate that or go around that, or how it would interpret what it's running into in those situations?
Oh, those are all real world scenarios within a warehouse environment. Having broken pallet pieces, having stretch wrap or overhang the tails from wrap, covering up pocket openings. One of the things that I'm very proud of is our partnership with Thorough AI and the development of our autonomy stack to overcome these daily challenges within real operations. With the AP44, that is an AMR. But it can also operate as an AGV using some of those zone rules and features that we've received feedback from our customers on. So with that being in an AMR, it will do the obstacle avoidance. It wants to get from A to B in the shortest, quickest possible route. But in the event that we do need repeatable pathways and timed travel paths, we have that ability to introduce an AGV route where it doesn't do the obstacle avoidance. It will stop and act very much like a traditional AGV when something is in its pathway. Overcoming the stretch wrap and the pocket openings, one of the things using embodied AI is building palette models specifically to give the robot decision-making ability based on what it sees as the type of pallet to pick up. So whether that be a CHEP pallet, block style pallet, Pico, whether you're GMA, grade B, grade A, doesn't matter. Whether that's a plastic pallet, whether it's a skid. So our pallet models are built to be able to handle all variations of North American pallets, but then a step beyond that, we are actually able to see through that stretch film and still see that pocket opening. So where traditional automation fails, we're actually able to continue through that stretch film, identify what style pallet it is, and then the robot makes a decision on how to handle that. So all of that being internal to our autonomy stack. But then even with those brownfield operations that don't have strong Wi-Fi, we are not having to continuously have a strong Wi-Fi signal. We are not constantly navigating using pinging off of APs, but rather as that signal strength becomes available, we are then able to continue with our logging, or maybe there's route changes where we need to communicate to the cloud and receive something back. So small packets of information, not having to have a constant Wi-Fi signal through all of our navigation. These are the real things that operations require, because they don't all have the best, brand new, cleanest floors, freshly polished, the brightest lighting, the best Wi-Fi network. Those are actual customer facilities that exist, and we are up for those challenges. And that's really where our product shines, as well as our autonomy stack and our autonomy partner with our OAI really comes through and proves ourselves over and over again in those challenging environments.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic, because it's definitely, I mean, as you mentioned, like all those different conditions that are not necessarily ideal conditions, those are actually a lot of the realities of the majority of warehouses that are out there, right? They're not all, beautiful as some stock images may portray them to be out there, but being able to navigate that, right? Because I think one conversation I had in particular really stood out, where it was like, okay, well, we're trying this autonomous pallet jack and from a different provider, and if it sees pallet wrap, it doesn't know how to navigate it. It thinks it's like an obstruction, right? It just kind of stops and calls an exception, which is frustrating, is like disheartening, right? Because if you're taking something that a human easily interprets as like, oh, well, I can just go right through that plastic wrap, like it's not going to do anything to the normal pallet jack if I'm driving it, right? Then you want that to translate over to the autonomous side as well. So it's very great that you've kind of thought about all those different aspects, and how do we get this operating in like a true brownfield environment and be able to basically put it down and get it going, as you mentioned earlier, to be able to do that. So very interesting to hear that. And now, I mean, from the product offerings now, like if somebody, we talked a little bit about, this being kind of an approachable solution, but also maybe a stepping stone or a starting point for people that are just kind of getting into automation. Which model, like, would you suggest is the entry level, or how do you assess which one would be like the right fit to take that first step with?
Always the AP44, the autonomous pallet truck. Starting with those horizontal moves, those are the most frequent, and those have the least value when it comes to operations. And when I say the least value, it's not what their customers are paying for. Customers don't pay for product to be moved from point A to point B within a warehouse. the customers are paying for that delivery to show up to them, loaded on a truck, the right quantity, and everything in good order. Anything that is within those four walls within an operation, the customer's really not paying for that. So our customers, we want to make it as easy for their operators to do more higher value tasks. So think about those quality checks, making sure that the units that they're storing aren't damaged, making sure that the pallets are, if they're storing up in racking, that those pallets don't have hanging stringers that, could potentially fall and create an injury. So being able to redeploy current operators to higher value tasks within an operation, that's what these are solving. And really starting with that AP44, start with that simple A to B workflow. A lot of times operations don't think about how do you move garbage or dunnage through your facility? It's usually, I got a guy.
Yeah.
I got somebody that's pushing a bin or driving around and collecting garbage cans. Well, what if you had that operator doing something that's a little more value added than just picking up trash or moving dunnage from a dock area to the baler? What if we actually had the robot do that? And so those are some of those conversations that we have that customers are like, I never even thought about trying something like that. Well, that's a good entry level way to introduce automation within an operation. Think about how you move your dunnage and trash. It's not sexy, but it's definitely something that a robot can handle. And then from there, build upon that. Go into your tugger for more batch delivery. So milk runs, moving multiple loads to lines or pick zones on a loop. Then you can get into more of that stacker or the three-wheel counterbalance, where now you're bringing in that vertical dimension. So doing that on and off of a P&D station, in-feed, outfeed conveyor for high-speed stretch wrappers. Those are definitely value-added use cases, but that's also not something to start automating from day one. Start from that floor to floor, build up into that vertical.
Yeah. And I think that makes so much sense. And I love the trash example you said, right? It's, as you said, it's not sexy, but I still think it's exciting because I've seen that, and obviously I've come from operations background, so we had somebody that would move the trash, and it was a very manual thing, but you generate a ton of trash in the warehouse, right? And then when you short and you got to pull that person in to do something else, right? The trash gets piled up and doesn't look so great, right? And then your boss says, "Why is there so much trash everywhere?" Right? And you try to explain, and he's like, "No, take care of the trash. I don't want to see it like this," right? And that's from personal experience, I will say. But that is a great way to start, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be this complicated thing, as you mentioned, or this complex problem that you're trying to solve for. It can be kind of these lower hanging fruit of things that maybe are not necessarily valuable, but you could free up a body to do something more valuable with their time that ultimately drives, as you said, that value to the customer at the end of the day, who, most customers, they don't care really how you're moving product around. They just care, do you give me my stuff accurately, and do you get it to me on time, which is the underlying importance there, right? So very interesting to kind of hear about these new offerings, and also the approach to them and how you've thought about how to tackle challenges within the market and create solutions that are able to address problems and challenges at multiple different levels of kind of automation maturity, for those that are just getting started to those that already have figured some things out. I think the range fits in perfectly with a lot of the different spectrums of warehousing operations from a maturity level there. So tell us a little bit about, because you mentioned, the journey started about 4 years ago with the BPM 44, and now it's evolved to this new 4 different product offerings. But what does the future of the autonomous solutions division for Big Joe kind of look like?
I think 2 things. First, execute our launch cadence and build up that deployment base. So we're already well underway with our AP44. We've done field testing through the first half of this year, and we have our deployments starting next week. And we actually have deployments scheduled out with customers all the way through Q3 and already going into Q4. And then we're going to be launching the Tugger later part of Q3. We're going to be bringing the Stacker to market by the end of Q4, and then that 3-wheel counterbalance into Q1. So really focused on executing our launch and ensuring that our deployments are successful. Our future is really measured in live deployments. Anybody can unveil the products.
Sure.
But really, we hit the scoreboard by having running shifts with this equipment in real buildings. And that's really starting to grow as of next week. So I think the second part of this is really our dealer partnerships. Most autonomous companies sell direct because their products need more advanced support close by.
Yeah.
Ours is built so that our Big Joe dealer partner network, and our partner network is 140 dealer partners across North America. That's Canada, US, Mexico, 140. These are the folks that are already servicing our base equipment, and they can sell, they can deploy, they can support our automation. So how do you scale past early adopters? It's, we're never going to have to hire a full automation team as a customer. We are handling that through our own Big Joe autonomous solutions team, as well as our dealer partners. And that's really where the market that we've built for.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting point there, where, as you mentioned, a lot of autonomous offering, it's got to come directly from them, or it's got to go through some type of integrator, right, in a sense, because there's a lot of complexity to the deployment, to the support, to, the ongoing kind of development of the product. But it's kind of a testament to the simplicity of it if you can easily roll it out to these dealers that, maybe traditionally we're not offering autonomous solutions, just traditional kind of lift truck equipment and things of that nature. So very interested to see, how the deployments kind of roll out and the evolution and reception in the market as well. If people are interested in getting a demo or potentially interested in learning more about these offerings, what's the best way to go about that?
I think our best way, head to our website, www.bigjoeforklifts.com. There's a sales inquiry that you can go submit a request. Also, go talk to your local Big Joe dealer in your local area. If you need help identifying one, reach out to us. We'd be happy to get you partnered with somebody local that is already in your backyard and is already available for that post-deployment support.
All right. Awesome. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here, but definitely go and get that demo, and hopefully I'll get a demo myself here soon too. I want to see these things in person. Unfortunately, I missed them at Automate, but definitely looking forward to seeing how you all continue to evolve these offerings and also how you continue to kind of make the automation approachable in a sense. I think that's a really smart pathway to go, and I think we'll hit a lot of of different parts of the market, which is really smart and great for kind of the advancement of innovation within the four walls as well. So, Nick, really appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you for your time today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.